You're listening to the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast, episode 77. How I've reverse engineered almost everything I share and teach so that instead of guessing forwards, I've taken what I know is required and worked back to figure out what students need to therefore do, and then figured out some great ways to have them learn how to do that for themselves. So I'm sharing what I do, how I do it, and why, so that you know where my information is coming from and maybe also have your teen give it a go as well. I'm Katie Jones, and with over 15 years in education as an award-winning high school teacher, international external examiner, and as a study coach, I've helped thousands of students skyrocket their results and confidence. And this podcast is where I share all my insights, tactics, and tips with you, the parent, so you can help your hardworking teen get happy, smart, and successful in their study, and have you both enjoy the journey along the way. This is the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast. Hey there, VIPs. How are things going? Things are going great over here. I am almost at the end of external exam marking, having seen and marked hundreds of answers so far, and as you can imagine, have been sharing plenty of takeaways and tips and how-tos and how not to do's with our members on our coaching calls. And I've also been recording an exam marker video diary. Now that has turned into almost like an annual ritual for me ever since I started my first one, just because I thought it would be a cool idea about, 8 years ago or so. And I will publish that for you very soon. But I did want to share something that is related to this, and that is my reverse engineered approach to almost everything that I share and train and teach in terms of strategic study and exam technique, and essentially study success. How to get more marks with more confidence is how I have worked backwards from things like years and years of external examiner training and tens of thousands of scripts marked, of exam board writing panel and formal coursework moderation. Because what I've realized I do is that rather than looking for what I think is creating good results in students that I work with, I actually look at what is required and what gets those top results, and then I reverse engineer what students can do and what your team can therefore do to create those results for themselves and do it in a clear and structured way. Because I've come to almost every concept and system that I share by reverse engineering everything that I've seen and learned and been trained in when it comes to assessments and exams and all the things that are going on behind the scenes of exam boards. And I'm sharing this here on the podcast because what I see others in this field often doing in education is that they look at successful students, or they are maybe a successful student themselves, and they try to distill what it is that they're doing or what is happening that's creating that success, that's responsible for that success. Now, I'm not putting down any tutors or study companies. We all have different expertise and experience and different takes on things and styles of teaching or training or tutoring that can definitely benefit all different types of students, and some more than others or some in different ways. And I will say that even just the act of trying to distinguish what is helpful and what isn't and what has been done that's created success can be useful as an exercise in itself. Scrutinizing different study habits or whatever it might be, it can all be really valuable. And there is certainly more than one way to do things, and different students are requiring different things in order to uplevel their study and their success. But I will say that one issue I do often think of with that approach is that we can create success because of or in spite of something that we're doing. So I'll give you an example. A student who gets straight A's might spend the hour before they go to sleep watching funny cat videos on their phone. It's something that they do. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily what's helping create their success. It might be that it's good for them to relax and switch off, and a nice reward after doing some hard work maybe for their study, but it might also be reducing the quality of their sleep and therefore their focus the next day. Or there might be another student who is actually getting disappointing grades, whatever that might be for them or for the person who's observing them or trying to question them and figure out what it is that's maybe going wrong in this case. And that student might be spending 3 hours every night studying. Maybe they're keeping their phone out of reach and they're going to sleep at a good time. Would we determine that those things are not working? Would we say that 3 hours must therefore not be enough? Or maybe we'd say that it's too much and they're burnt out. Or what is it that's happening in those 3 hours? Maybe they could be doing study actions or activities that are more effective. Or maybe they're putting all of their effort into learning more subject knowledge and they don't actually have the skills of application. And you know by now, that's a pretty common reality. But does that mean that studying for 3 hours each evening is bad? Not necessarily. It's just that these things are relative, and an action or activity does not necessarily cause an outcome, even though they are both happening. So what I prefer to do is reverse engineer from the outcome backwards. And honestly, this has just been something that I have done naturally. It's something that I just do and have done over the years, ever since actually I was a student. I'll tell you about that in a second. I've got an example to share with you. I just sort of do it instinctively. And I think it's just because I prefer concrete black and white answers, and I like systems, and I like a clear path to work on rather than having things a little bit open or vague, and what I've come to coin the term guessing forwards. So when it comes to getting more marks in exams or essays or assignments, I've been able to do this reverse engineering over the years because I've marked thousands of external assessments, exam papers, and coursework, and I've taught and trained thousands of students over more than 17 years now, and have been able to figure out some of the most effective ways to then share the information and insights that I've built up and have students then build and hone their skills for themselves. So if we're talking about your teens' study success in terms of their results, which I would argue actually does go hand in hand with their confidence and their enjoyment, because the more skilled and informed they are in how the whole academic game works, the more confident they are, and the more marks they're going to get, and the more enjoyable the whole experience of education and academia is going to be. But if we're talking about results, then with every external exam paper that I mark each year, sometimes multiple papers it's been each year when I've also been full-time teaching and marking mock exams and trials and other internal assessments, what happens is I kind of get into a system, and any external marker will tell you this. You get into a bit of a rhythm of knowing what you're looking for in particular answers to particular questions on that paper. And I get to know what triggers me into ticking a criteria or moving a candidate up the rubric. And as markers, we of course have specific things that we need to see in order to award a mark, or certain things that count as evidence of a descriptor being met. And once you've seen pretty much every possible way that these things can be shown or written down, and I will also say the ways that maybe just slightly miss the mark, literally, or sometimes massively miss it, get nowhere near it, then you get really good at figuring out what's needed and what isn't, and then distilling the most efficient or effective ways to do it. And you start to see patterns and overlaps across different subjects and different tasks, and links and connections between criteria and mark schemes. And you see things like exactly why this response got full marks and why this one missed out by just a sliver. And you know then what that sliver is and how important it is. And I will say, it was one of those little sliver moments that happened in one of the questions that I was marking in my first ever external exam marker training, and obviously all the papers that then I marked for the GCSE exams back in England. And in one question on the paper, the mark scheme stated that students had to say exactly what type of pollution was happening. Not just that there was pollution, they'd say what type of pollution it was in their response as they were writing about impacts of a development. Now, that in itself wasn't hard and it was a very easy fix, but there was no teaching or rule in the syllabus that said that's what had to happen. It was just part of what made a response detailed for that particular question. And now this on its own, of course, is a tiny little thing, but put together many of these and build a picture up over many, many years with maybe 100 different papers and formal assessments that I have marked and tens of thousands of responses, and you build up a pretty big success toolkit that can be applied across different tasks, different subjects, and at different levels. And this is where things then sort of start to expand and build. Because there is more to all of this than just giving specific words and writing specific things in answers. This then kind of extrapolates into ways of working and particular study habits or effective study techniques, bigger and more conceptual aspects rather than just specific words for a specific question. And an example of this is my reverse engineered revision planning system. I literally named it that many years ago, reverse engineered revision planning system. And little known fact, I actually developed this when I was a student myself. And let me tell you, I would never be featured as one of those students who had some huge success and was top of the class and was asked to share their secrets. I got A's and B's across my GCSEs and my A-levels, and I was always a good student, but I was never a standout, either in terms of my knowledge or any super high achievement. But it turns out that this little system was sound, and I have used it and tweaked it with thousands of students since, so that it really is now a proven system. And it came from the experience of running out of time to revise everything I needed to. I think that actually happened when I was doing my mocks for my GCSEs. And honestly, I think this is something that pretty much every hardworking student has experienced or can relate to. So that being the first time I'd ever had any kind of exam block, what I realized was that instead of working forwards and thinking about what I needed to study from a list of topics and then guessing at how much time to spend on things, or just really working through until each thing was covered, and ultimately running out of time to cover everything, next time I had an exam block, I reversed it and planned based on time rather than content. And I worked backwards from the exam dates. Now, I share the details and the specific steps and the exact system of doing all of this, along with templates for calendaring and the STAR system that I use for this in Catapult 4 in the 10-week grade transformation program, if you would like this for your teen. But before you go off and enroll them and think this is going to be the magic cure for fitting in everything that needs to be revised, let me also share this. Because did that system mean I was suddenly able to fit in everything perfectly? No, definitely not. And the same goes for the students who use this system today. They will often find that as they work backwards, there actually isn't enough time available for all the things they need to cover. And I get it. Now you may be thinking, well, in that case, Katie, what is the point of even using this system? And this is the answer I give to those students who then say to me, okay, I've used this system, but I've realized there isn't enough time to fit everything in. And I say, great. Great that we know this now, rather than when we've still got 5 topics to cover over 3 different subjects and only 1 day left to cover them all. Now we can make some strategic decisions. What are you going to prioritize? What revision strategies are going to be best? Which ones are going to be a little bit quicker? And which things do we definitely want to spend more time on? And which things do we maybe not need to spend so much time on? Let's make some strategic decisions now rather than last minute panic decisions. Which, let's be honest, aren't really decisions, are they? They are just stress-based reactions. And that is the point that I want to make. That reverse engineering is about taking the optimal or the desired outcome or result and working backwards strategically. So on coaching calls, rather than reading through what the task asks you to do, we often work from the mark scheme backwards and then align that with what is needed to be done. And we discuss and dissect, okay, what do these criteria descriptors really mean and require and look like? And then how can we craft a response in terms of what has to be done that meets these top criteria, that allows us to access those top criteria. Where can we do that in the actual task? What is going to be the best structure for this essay and the content if we know that we need to be showing X, Y, and Z? Or how much detail is actually needed in order to show depth of understanding? How can we do that? Or what is the best topic to choose for this project if we know that we're going to need to do this, this, and this? What's going to be the best topic to align or fit in with that and be able to do it at a high level? Then, once we know those things for whatever the type of task it is, we can work backwards from that. We can make smart decisions, and we really have a clear plan of action now laid out. And it is great doing these things for specific tasks, but like I mentioned earlier, when you've done these things enough times, you start to build systems that work across the board, which is how I've created the strategies and steps and techniques that I train students in. Because this is how my brain likes to do things. It just likes to say, okay, well, if I know that this, this, and this is required, then this is what I need to do in order to achieve that. And here's what this looks like as an overall system. And that's how I've created things like the topic and focus system for breaking down an essay title and then planning the response, like the 3 steps of analysis, because I know what's required to be considered a solid or detailed or sophisticated analysis and how to work back and chunk that down, whether it's analyzing data or analyzing a Shakespeare quote. Like when I developed the concept of trigger words for answering something like a compare question, because I know what will trigger the marker to give it marks, what counts as meeting a comparative criterion. And like I just mentioned, reverse engineering the choice of topic for an open task. So it isn't just total free choice. It's actually based on the mark scheme and the elements that are required and what will enable us to fulfill those in the highest quality way and in the smoothest, most direct way. So I take what gets marks and work it backwards into a simple but effective system. And as you can tell, probably from the way I'm talking about this, I really love doing this because it means that students are then independent. They have the know-how to be able to do this for themselves and apply it to whatever task or question they're faced with. They're not just doing things in a parrot fashion kind of way, copying cluelessly, like I need to study 3 hours each evening, where they don't have necessarily the how or the why and the real understanding and concepts behind it. I want them to be able to do these things in a way where all the dots are connected for them from the outcome required back to the task or the question and the way that it is worded, so they can see this and do it for themselves no matter what is thrown at them. Which is why, as well as better results, it also creates so much confidence for students. So that's my secret. I reverse engineer everything. I don't look at what's working and try to figure out why or how it's working and then have students try to copy it. I take the perfect or desired outcome and I pick it apart and I take note of thousands of responses and hundreds of mark scheme criteria and rubrics and lay the path, connect those dots in reverse. So if this resonates, let me throw out a couple of invitations. The first one is that doing this as a student can be really, really beneficial. So having your teen reverse engineer a rubric alongside their next assignment task, that is definitely something I would encourage. And the second invite is that if you and your teen would just like all of this done for them and have them trained in this, have everything laid out on a plate, and even have me do this with them personally for their own tasks in our live group coaching calls, then I invite you to check out the 10-week grade transformation program. Just go to the Rock Solid Study website and click on program for more details. Because I would love to give them these ready-made and tested systems and have them trained up so they can do all of this for themselves smoothly and accurately and confidently. And you can actually see when you go to the summary page for the 10WGT, some of the students who are doing exactly that. You can watch their videos, you can listen to their stories. And I will say that right now, with the summer holidays coming up, this can be a great time to have your teen complete this training and then be ready to hit the ground running and put everything into action in term 1 next year. So I hope you have a great rest of your week. I will see you back here next week for another episode of the podcast. Take care and I'll see you then. Bye. If you're ready to have your teen achieve their best possible result with less stress, then I want to invite you to enroll them in the 10-week Grade Transformation Program, where they're going to learn the key concepts, skills, and strategies to catapult their performance in assessments and exams. It's risk-free. They either achieve bigger and better results with a whole lot more confidence in 10 weeks, or we refund you in full. Just head over to www.rocksolidstudy.com/program and I'll see you there.